You knew my father's secrets better than you knew my trust, didn't you? I demanded, the sting of betrayal raw in my throat as my duplicitous mentor coolly replied, hidden truths safeguard legacies. Even if they fracture hearts, I spat back, voice trembling with venom. Then bury my legacy with every lie you ever spun. Words that cut deeper than any inheritance ever could. Chapter 1. Shattered Beginnings. The morning light seeped through the blinds in muted gold, casting long shadows across the sterile office floor. As I sat at my new desk, a place I cautiously hoped would herald a fresh start, I couldn't help but let my mind wander back to the betrayal that had shattered my very notion of trust. Every deep breath reminded me of the familiar sting of old wounds, the echo of whispered promises from the family I once believed would always protect me. I had learned that trust was as fragile as the porcelain figurines my mother once cherished, beautiful, yet easily broken. I adjusted the stack of papers on my desk and took a slow, deliberate sip of lukewarm coffee, steeling myself for the day ahead. I was a force in the business world, renowned for my acumen and relentless drive. Yet beneath that polished surface lay scars that hadn't begun to heal. The thought coursed like a slow, relentless river. Trust once shattered might never piece itself back together. But I had learned to channel that pain into ambition, a way to build something truly unbreakable out of the shards of my former life. The office buzzed with its usual mix of hushed conversations and the occasional clacking of keyboards. I felt both an outsider and a reluctant insider to a game whose rules I was only beginning to comprehend. As the clock struck 9, the door to my department swung open, and in walked a man whose presence could rival the brilliance of a midday sun. His arrival carried an air of effortless charm, and even in the bustling corridors I couldn't help but feel that something in him was calculated, a magnetic blend of warmth and hidden depths. He introduced himself as Marcus, a senior mentor assigned to guide our team through a maze of high-stakes business maneuvers. His booming good morning was punctuated by a smile that felt genuine yet elusive, sparking an immediate flicker of intrigue deep within me. As he spoke, his eyes seemed to hold a secret, a hint of enigmas that danced mysteriously between the lines of his well-practiced advice. I couldn't shake off the sensation that beneath his charm was an agenda not yet revealed, a duality that mirrored my own internal conflict between self-reliance and the desire to be seen, understood, and maybe even rescued from my own self-imposed isolation. Marcus and I soon found ourselves huddled over a sleek glass conference table, discussing the roadmap for an upcoming presentation that promised to be a turning point for the company. His voice was laced with confidence, and the casual ease with which he navigated topics from quarterly projections to emerging market ethics made it hard to tell if there was a hidden meaning behind his every word. While his advice was invaluable, I detected subtle hints of a deeper conflict brewing within the corridors of the company, a restless undercurrent of ethical dilemmas and disputed inheritances that resonated painfully with my own recent past of betrayals. I listened intently as Marcus sketched out ideas for the presentation on a whiteboard with a fluid precision. His charisma was intoxicating. Every time he smiled or leaned closer to emphasize a point, my pulse quickened, and I found myself dancing along the precarious edge between professional reliance and the dangerous allure of personal attachment. It was as if the room itself echoed with the promise of transformation, a transformation that could either empower me or leave me exposed to yet another fracture of trust. Between the lines of our conversation, momentary silences unfolded into fleeting glances that suggested a shared understanding of the inherent risks we both faced. I recalled the lingering bitterness of betrayal that had haunted my family history, and I wondered if I was unwittingly repeating the same cautious, solitary dance with destiny. Marcus, with his affable demeanor and hidden intensity, was both a refuge and a reminder of the complexities of human connection. As our meeting drew to a close, a mix of anticipation and unease curled in my stomach. I couldn't help but think about the upcoming high-profile presentation, realizing that it wasn't just about business strategy. It was a crucible that might force painful truths into the light. Was Marcus merely a seasoned mentor, or was he an architect of the very ethical labyrinth he now helped me navigate? The question lingered heavily in the charged silence of the conference room. I gathered my fangs, the faint echo of Marcus' parting words still resonating in the air. As I stepped into the corridor, a chill ran through me, a whisper of the storm that was building on the horizon. The promise of a new beginning mingled with the remnants of shattered trust, leaving me with one burning thought: could I dare to invest my guarded heart in someone so mysteriously compelling, even as my past reminded me of love's perilous fragility? The door of the meeting room closed behind me, leaving the faint glow of anticipation and uncertainty in its wake. I paused for a heartbeat, a final glance back at the board, and wondered silently, what secrets would tomorrow unveil, and at what cost? Chapter 2. Unsettled Alliances. Under the cold gleam of fluorescent lights in the glass-paneled boardroom, Elena sat before her laptop with a sense of determined urgency, the high-profile business presentation looming like a crucible for her future. Across the table, her mentor, Marcus, leaned in with an intensity that belied his calm exterior. Their shared mission to polish every detail of the upcoming presentation forced them into an intimacy that Elena found both exhilarating and unnerving. Marcus's guidance was meticulous, each suggestion a small chisel against the raw stone of her ideas. Yet, even as he critiqued and enhanced her slides with a precision that came from years of boardroom battles, Elena began to catch the subtle tremor in his otherwise steady voice when he touched upon the company's financial history. There were fleeting moments, a guarded glance, a hesitance before answering a pointed question, hinting at deeper truths buried behind corporate gloss. As the hours passed, a series of confidential documents lay open between them. The numbers and graphs, once merely the foundation of a presentation, now took on an ominous tone. Marcus casually mentioned details that didn't quite fit with the narrative the board expected. References to a corporate inheritance, pieced together with tentative suggestions of financial irregularities, sparked in Elena an inner tumult reminiscent of past betrayals within her own family. The faint murmur of forgotten secrets whispered through those documents, a reminder of the wedge-driven betrayal that had once shattered her trust and transformed her quiet resilience into a steely determination. Elena's mind whirled as she wrestled with conflicting emotions. Her admiration and loyalty to Marcus clashed inexorably with a burgeoning suspicion. Late one evening, spent huddled over her screen with only the office hum for company, she recalled a family conversation filled with half-truths about money and betrayal. Now, in the sterile light of the boardroom, Marcus's ambiguous behavior tapped into those old wounds, his near-accidental intimations about company inheritance, and skewed figures stirring doubts that were impossible to ignore. In one such late session, while rearranging charts and reordering bullet points, Marcus reached out to smooth the stray hair from her forehead. His touch, brief and ostensibly meant to reclaim focus, sent an unexpected warmth racing along Elena's skin. Her eyes met his, and in that suspended moment the boundary between mentor and protege began to blur. There was a spark, fleeting and fierce, that both frightened and fascinated her, an allure tempered by the pervasive sense of danger that underpinned their tangled alliance. The air between them was charged with unspoken questions. Would the financial inconsistencies prove catastrophic? Were these mere mishaps, or the tip of an iceberg hiding corrupt inheritance schemes? And what was the true nature of Marcus's involvement? Their collaboration, which initially felt confined to strategy and numbers, had evolved into a labyrinth of trust and suspicion. As they delved deeper into the intricacies of the presentation, each correction and comment from Marcus seemed to carry a double meaning, a hint at truths he was not willing to voice openly. It was as if every insight he shared was laced with caution, as if he too was ensnared by the delicate balance between corporate duty and personal loyalty. Elena, on her part, felt that familiar shiver of foreboding. The mentor she had once idolized was revealing slivers of a past filled with complex loyalties and dangerous choices. His duality was a mirror for the complexity in her own life, a life shaped by betrayal and the relentless pursuit of justice. The tension heightened on the night before the final review of their presentation. In a quiet office that smelled of stale coffee and fervent ambition, Elena confronted a particularly disconcerting slide, a financial projection interlaced with anomalies that Marcus had not fully explained. His eyes flickered with an unreadable expression, and for a heartbeat, the distance between them shrank to nothing. Soft words were exchanged, tainted with an undercurrent of vulnerability and guarded confession. Their voices dropped, mingling in the silence of the after-hours workspace, as if the walls themselves were privy to secrets too dangerous to voice in the daylight. Though no concrete revelations were made that night, the encounter left Elena with a profound sense of unfolding complexity. Every layer of the presentation now held a dual significance. On the surface, a milestone in her career, but beneath, a web of deceit and half-truths that threatened the very foundation of her beliefs. In that moment, the alliance between mentor and protege was not just about a business venture. It had mutated into a high-stakes dance of trust and betrayal, one that could either lift her to new heights or plunge her into a labyrinth of moral ambiguity. As she finally shut down her computer, the soft glow of the monitor was replaced by the harsher light of reality. Elena's heart pounded with the intensity of unspoken revelations and the charged possibilities of forbidden rendezvous. Her journey was no longer a straightforward professional ascent, but a perilous path where the lines between duty and desire were dangerously blurred. Chapter 3. Revelations in the Spotlight. The boardroom was a crucible of tension that morning. Rows of polished mahogany seats and the incandescent gleam of a massive screen spoke of an event meant to showcase the company's future. But as the presentation started, a different reality began to unfold. The projector flickered to life, and what was meant to be a celebration of a visionary strategy swiftly became a stage for exposing deep-seated corruption. Every slide, every piece of undeniable evidence, forced the corporate board to face the systematic fraud that had been silently eroding the company's integrity for years. The room filled with gasps and murmurs of disbelief, and amidst this chaos lay the deeper, personal stakes that cut even sharper. The growing suspicion surrounding the protagonist's long-held beliefs about her inheritance and the seemingly intertwined fate of the family legacy with the company's misdeeds. Amelia, who had always been driven by a passion for justice and an unyielding quest to unravel hidden truths, stood at the front watching the unspooling of evidence as if her heartbeat were in sync with every click of the projector. The digital trail laid bare manipulations of accounts, hidden offshore transactions, and the systematic diversion of funds meant for long-trusted community projects. With every statistic and meticulously compiled data point, the interconnected web of deceit became clear. The presentation was not just a confession of corporate greed, but a revelation that hit close to home, reinforcing what Amelia had long suspected. Her own inheritance was deeply connected to these fraudulent practices. In the midst of this unfolding public debacle, all eyes turned to the two figures, whose very relationship had always teetered on the brink of ambiguity, her mentor, Daniel, and herself. Daniel, with his calm, measured presence, had been a beacon of guidance for Amelia through turbulent times. But today, in the luminous glare of harsh truths, his once steady allegiance came into question. As the board began to scramble for explanations and damage control, Daniel's face betrayed a storm of emotions, regret, fear, and an underlying, yet unspoken complicity. It was in that charged atmosphere that the unspoken tension between them reached a fever pitch. The presentation drew to a close, but the revelations it triggered did not fade with the blinking cursor of a concluding slide. The discussion that followed was tumultuous, with board members demanding accountability, while whispers of betrayal echoed through the room. Amelia found herself staring at Daniel, her mind swirling with memories of his mentorship, their secret meetings, and the moments viewed as both comforting and dangerously intimate. His eyes met hers with an intensity that belied the calm he tried so desperately to project. The room around them melted into insignificance, replaced by the raw exposure of their intertwined fates. Unable to stand the overwhelming surge of betrayal and vulnerability, Amelia approached him as the murmurs of the board receded into a low hum of anxious confusion. In a moment that defied the structured decorum expected in such a setting, the distance between mentor and mentee dissolved. They found themselves alone in a quiet, curtained office off the main floor, a temporary refuge from the storm that raged outside. In that enclosed space, Daniel confessed in a low, tremulous tone the heavy burden he had carried, one that involved dark decisions made in the name of safeguarding her future, decisions that ultimately cost the company its soul. His voice, thick with remorse, bridged the gulf between professional duty and raw, unfiltered emotion. Before either could question which was the greater betrayal, the corporate sins that bound their futures or the secret lies, told in whispered confidences, the air between them ignited. In a desperate, passionate moment of blurred boundaries, their lips met in a kiss that was as much an apology as it was an entreaty for forgiveness. It was drawn out, a mingling of grief and fervor, a collision of love and betrayal that left both trembling in the aftermath. In that embrace, amidst revelations that threatened to shatter not only a company, but a life built on trust and ambition, they found fleeting solace in each other's arms. Outside, the repercussions of the presentation began to materialize. The intricate dance of power and corruption continued to twist and constrict the hearts of all involved. Yet for Amelia and Daniel, the kiss was a moment of undeniable clarity, a savage, heartfelt acknowledgement that their fates, marred by deception and punctuated by passion, were forever bound in the spotlight of a truth that could no longer be ignored. As the chapter closed on the dramatic events of the day, the lingering taste of apologies unspoken and the tremor of forbidden intimacy promised that the journey ahead would test both their resolve and the fragile remnants of trust between them. Chapter 4. Inheritance of Deceit. Under the vaulted ceiling of the ancestral estate hall, crystal chandeliers cast a gentle glow over a sea of glittering silks and carefully rehearsed smiles. Tonight's inheritance ceremony was meant to celebrate legacy, yet behind every laugh and congratulatory nod lay a current of tension waiting to be unleashed. The protagonist, Elena, stood at the center of it all, a reluctant heir to a fortune, and a heart heavy with the burdens of shattered trust. As the ceremony unfolded with stately formality, whispered rumors coalesced around each ornate corner. It was during the reading of the will that the first cracks appeared in the guise of decorum. Documents and disclosures, presented with precise legal clarity, slowly unraveled the story of business fraud that had contaminated her family name. Elena's eyes flickered to her mentor Victor, whose normally steady gaze now betrayed hesitation. Their previously unshaken alliance was now tinged with an inexplicable shadow. At a less crowded moment in the gilded antechamber, Elena sought answers. The silence of a private alcove provided the perfect stage for truths to be laid bare. "Victor," she began, voice trembling between indignation and sorrow, "everything we fought for, everything I believed in, is built on lies. My family's trust, my legacy, all connected to this fraud. I need to know. What did you do?" Victor's expression faltered, his dark eyes clouded with conflicting emotions. The weight of the moment pressed on him, and for a heartbeat, time itself seemed to slow. "Elena," he said quietly, each syllable edged with remorse, "you were never meant to see this. I believe that preserving our legacy meant making the hard choices, even if they meant bending the truth. Your father's error, long buried in financial retributions and deals made in shadows, was something I thought I could contain." The confession cut into Elena like a blade. Years of admiration and reliance on Victor now collided with the bitter sting of betrayal. "Contain," she spat, her voice rising. "You facilitated it. You turned a blind eye, manipulated the narrative, and now my entire identity is built on deceit." Victor took a step closer, the distance between them charged with the weight of their shared past. "I never wished to deceive you. I acted as your guide because I believed in you. And I hoped one day you'd understand that every choice has consequences. Even if they are painful, my actions were meant to protect you from a truth you were not ready to face." Elena's hands trembled, her touch flitting momentarily to the pendant around her neck, a token of her family's honor, now tarnished by his admission. The air between them thickened with a strange cocktail of anger and a lingering, conflicted desire. The questions of betrayal mingled with memories of tender moments when Victor's counsel had comforted her soul. Was it possible that the same hands that had nurtured her growth were also responsible for her ruin? In the charged silence that followed his words, the distant sound of ceremonial applause from the grand hall seemed to mock the intimacy of their confrontation. With tears glistening in her eyes, Elena's resolve wavered. In an impulsive twist driven by heartbreak and the lingering warmth of past affection, she advanced, her face inches from his, and pressed her lips to his in a kiss that was equal parts sorrow and desperate longing. It was not a kiss of reconciliation, but of raw conflict, a mingling of passion and the bitter knowledge that love and betrayal were intertwined. When they finally broke apart, both stood breathless, caught in the aftermath of a moment that had both shattered and solidified their bond. The kiss, though fleeting, had been an admission. Beneath the layers of deceit, pain, and calculated decisions, there remained a human connection that was as potent as it was doomed. Elena's voice, now a husky whisper, once more sought the truth. "How can I move forward, Victor, knowing that every step I take is stained with the sins of our past. His eyes, glistening with unshed regret, met hers with a sincerity that belied his earlier duplicity. I don't have an answer that will heal your pain, he murmured, his own voice breaking. All I can hope for is that this revelation paves the way for your strength to rise above it. Perhaps one day, the inheritance of deceit will lead to a legacy of truth. In that quiet alcove, between the echoes of ceremony and the bittersweet residue of their kiss, Elena felt the first rays of a painful clarity. The exposure of hidden agendas and familial betrayal had rendered her world unrecognizable, yet in the raw honesty of the moment, she also sensed the stirring of a transformative power, a chance to redefine her history, and ultimately, herself. The chamber of legacy, burdened by the deceit of the past, watched silently as the next chapter of her life began to unfold. Chapter 5. New Beginnings Through Broken Trust. The morning light slanted through the rain-streaked window as she sat alone in her favorite corner of the cafe, lost in thought. In the aftermath of revelations that shattered her once unbreakable trust, every quiet moment had become a battleground where memories of betrayal clashed with her desperate need to reclaim who she once was. The betrayal was not merely a broken promise, it was a fracture in her belief in herself. Here, in this unfamiliar solitude, she began the painstaking work of rebuilding. The days that followed were filled with long hours spent revisiting every detail, every unspoken word that had led to this crossroads. With each piece of shattered trust, she recognized an echo of her own vulnerabilities, a soft reflection in the mirror of regret. Yet within that reflection, there was a spark, a determination that she would no longer allow someone else to define her worth. She was ready to choose personal redemption over the tangled web of a love steeped in deception. Late one afternoon, as the hues of dusk melted into a quiet twilight, she found herself face to face with the one person who had once been her mentor, and the unintended keeper of her innocence. The meeting was unplanned, a final convergence of paths, at a familiar spot under the old oak tree in the park, where so many secrets had been shared. Silence hung in the air, dense with the weight of unspoken truths, as he looked into her eyes with a mixture of regret and a spark of the passion they had once known. The conversation that unfolded was a delicate dance of forgiveness and lingering pain. He spoke softly, his voice carrying a trace of sorrow and unresolved longing, expressing apologies that never seemed enough. His words, though sincere, could not erase the betrayal that had left its mark on her soul. The intensity in his voice recalled past intimacy, but now it resonated with guilt and the heavy cost of trust lost. For a long moment, they stood apart yet close, two individuals bound by memories of what could have been, now scattered like autumn leaves at their feet. She listened, not with the intent to mend a broken foundation, but to acknowledge that what once was had irrevocably changed. A final question lingered in her heart. Could there ever be a return to what they once shared, or was it destined to remain a bittersweet chapter in an evolving story of self-discovery? Pausing, she took a slow step forward, closing the physical distance as if to confront more than just the tangible man before her. She was challenging the ghost of lost trust, and the pain it had carried. "I cannot carry this weight any longer," she said softly, voice trembling slightly not from sorrow, but the exhilaration of reclaiming her own narrative. Her declaration was not of anger but of weary resolve, a firm decision to prioritize her inner empowerment over any damaged love story. In the charged silence that followed, he reached out, an almost instinctive gesture that bridged the gap between regret and affection. Their eyes locked, and in that moment, a final ambiguous goodbye was tenderly sealed with a kiss. It was a kiss that spoke of past intimacy, of longing and the unspoken acknowledgement that while the chapter they had shared was coming to an end, it would forever be imbued with both regret and the promise of a new beginning. That gesture was as much a farewell as it was an affirmation, a recognition that letting go did not diminish what had transpired, but allowed for the possibility of healing in the spaces between. When the moment faded, she stepped back, leaving him with a parting look that was at once filled with gratitude and the unyielding determination to move forward alone. No words could capture the bittersweet mixture of pain and liberation swirling in that final embrace. With only the echoes of their shared past remaining, she turned away to find her own path, a path marked by the resilience of a spirit that refused to be defined by betrayal. As the cool evening air embraced her, she began walking with a certainty that had long been dormant. The lingering possibility of reconciliation, of once again finding trust in another, remained an open chapter. Yet the more pressing journey was inward, a journey towards rebuilding the scattered pieces of her identity into something far stronger than before. The unresolved arc between them was not closed entirely. It simply evolved into a quiet, compelling promise of potential healing. Under the soft murmur of city sounds, she accepted her new reality, the finality of that farewell kiss, a poignant reminder of both what was lost and what lay ahead. In choosing herself, she honored every hardship encountered,